is one of F1's most loved circuits, and it is one that's thrown up a fair whack of carnage and chaos throughout the years. And I challenge you to fin a race at this track that threw up more chaos and carnage than the one in 1998, which in all the chaos gave us Jordan's first win. So in honor of the late Eddie Jordan, who passed away earlier this year, let's look back at the chaos of the race that gave him his team's first win in F1. In qualifying, it was a McLaren 1-2, something that's honestly becoming a bit of a normal sight again these days, with Mika Hakkinen leading teammate David Coulthard. It was Damon Hill that was sitting third in his Jordan, separating the 12 McLarens first and second for the 12 Ferraris of Michael Schumacher fourth and Eddie Irvine fifth. Villeneuve, Fisichella, Ralf Schumacher, Frentzen and Alesi rounded off the top 10 meanwhile for a race that would be starting in the pissing rain, with some drivers starting on wets and some on intermediates. Pissing rain, a mix of wets and inters, a standing start, a hairpin for turn 1, and it just being Spa in general. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turned out, rather unsurprisingly, just about everything. The race got underway and turn 1 itself was okay. No big dramas, we Hakkinen maintaining P1, Schumacher and Villeneuve making good starts and gaining places, as Hill had a slow start, as did Coulthard, who dropped back too. Not an ideal start for the Englishman and the Scotsman, but what was even less ideal for everybody was what happened in East, because all hell broke loose. That is probably one of the most infamous crashes in F1 history, and it was all started by Coulthard himself spearing across the track, hitting the wall, and ending up right in the path of oncoming cars, and well, a car spearing back into the path of an oncoming traffic in conditions such as they had on this day in history is only going to end in so many ways. There was a lot of drivers involved in the pileup. David Coulthard, Eddie Irvine, Alex Wurz, Rubens Barrichello, Johnny Herbert, Olivier Panis, Jarno Trulli, Mika Salo, Pedro Diniz, Teranosuke Takagi, Ricardo Rosset, and Shinji Nakano. That is 12 cars involved. 13 actually, including Jos Verstappen, who got away from it and was able to drive away, but he didn't escape undamaged. The good thing for the 12 drivers involved is, however, F1 had spare cars in this era, and the rules at the time said that the start was deemed to be null and void if the race was stopped in the first 2 laps. So that meant that the drivers who'd been 10 out could jump into the spare car and tack the second start. Arles, Prost and Tyrrell had both drivers involved, and as a result Panis, Salo and Rosset couldn't take the second start due to their teammates being given the spare cars. Rubens Barrichello, who did get a minor injury in the crash, as did Irvine, no one was seriously hurt though, which was good, also didn't attack the second start, but Irvine did take his team's spare car and restarted the race, as did Coulthard, Wurz, Herbert, Trulli, Diniz, Takagi and Nakano. So after a rather lengthy, about 50-minute red flag delay, the race restarted, and this time it was much cleaner. And this time Damon Hill got a much better start and stormed right up into the lead of the race. Mika Hakkinen meanwhile found himself going wheel to wheel with title rival Michael Schumacher through turn 1, and it was the Finn that came off worse, being spun around to see the end of his race, and Herbert tagged him as well to see the end of his race as well. Elsewhere, Schumacher got into P2 ahead of Irvine, while Coulthard got into his second incident of the day, and not his last, when he went off into the gravel with Wurz. Coulthard got his second lucky strike of the day though, because he got going again so he could continue, but Wurz couldn't, so the race was barely going and already 7 cars were out. The safety car was unsurprisingly out, and the order after 2, a very hectic start, was Hill leading from Schumacher, Irvine, Alesi, Villeneuve and Frentzen, and closing out the point scorers. Racing got going again on lap 3, and it was frankly the cleanest and most drama-free start of the race so far. Although mind you, the bar is not exactly very high on that one, and it was a rolling start as is all safety car restart, so you know, obviously it's gonna be cleaner. There was a position change though, with Villeneuve passing Alesi for 4th. Things were fairly tame for a while though, with Hill leading from Schumacher, until he wasn't, because the German managed to get past his former title rival at the bus stop chicane on lap 8 to take the race lead, and then proceeded to vanish up front in classic Michael Schumacher in the rain fashion. The best possible scenario really for Schumi, because he came into this race 7 points down on Hakkinen, and with the McLaren driver out of the race, if Michael could bag snag the win and bag 10 points, he'd take the lead by 3 points. Elsewhere, Jos Verstappen's race came to a close with issues right before Eddie Irvine got into his second incident of the day when he spun off and damaged his wing while chasing Hill for second in the poor conditions, which it was still raining by the way, and that dragged Irvine into the pits for a new wing, some fuel, and some wet tyres, which as Murray Walker quipped was the tyre to be on at the time. Unless you're Michael Schumacher, of course, as the legendary commentator said.
So on full wet tyres, which are undoubtedly the thing to have at the moment if you're not Michael Schumacher.
He had a point. Michael Schumacher, since taking the lead, was just in a different postcode. He is, after all, regarded as one of F1's wet weather masters for a reason. Further down the grid, Takagi's race ended with a spin, making it 9 cars down, as the order on lap 12 looked like Michael Schumacher leading from Hill, Frentzen, Alesi, Villeneuve, and Ralf Schumacher closing out the points. Things continued, the rain continued lashing down, and eventually Schumacher made a beeline for the pits for the first time of the day. Hill and several others following him in, as Jacques Villeneuve went off and became the latest retirement of the race. 10 cars down, and we're not even halfway through yet. Schumacher was still leading though on his own. As I say, he just vanished up front after he took the lead. The man was something else in the wet. Tuero wasn't having the same fortunes though, as his race came to a close with issues, which makes it 11 cars down. But there was no interruptions for the running, so everything just continued as normal. Lap 25 came around, and that's when we'd see the rainy conditions of Spa 98 claim its niece victim. Michael Schumacher, who led by 40 seconds, was coming up to lap the sole remaining McLaren of David Coulthard, who was running 8th. Now, Michael and Ferrari would have been hoping for an easy, simple job lapping the McLaren. Jean Todt actually did go talk to McLaren to make sure that the Scotsman wouldn't play any tricks. And well, he did let him through immediately, but then he did try and let him through down on the exit of Pouon. However, he was still on the racing line, and when Schumacher then did try and pass him, well, he couldn't see him and he hit the back of the McLaren, leaving just 3 wheels on his Ferrari car. His car was still driving, though unfortunately for Schumi, it wasn't on the last lap, like it would go on to be when Hamilton found himself driving on 3 wheels 22 years later. Michael was understandably pissed and made a beeline for the McLaren garage as soon as he got out of his car in the pit lane, and to be honest, if it wasn't for the mechanics separating them and DC still wearing his helmet, going off how mad the German looked, I reckon Michael might have tried to deck DC. The misfortune did not end for Ferrari there though, as not too long later Eddie Irvine got involved in an incident for, again, the 3rd time this race, and he spun out of the race. Fisichella also saw his race come to a close as well, around this time after running into the back of Nakano in a very similar fashion to what Schumacher did to Coulthard, making it 14 out of 22 down. Only 8 cars were still in. Well, I say 8, but Coulthard was in the pits getting repairs done, and so was Nakano from that incident. The safety car had come out from that incident, and it was only for 6 cars on the track and 2 getting repairs done. However, both Coulthard and Nakano did rejoin the race, but a few laps down. And honestly, fair that they would just rejoin given how many cars had been going off and retiring. There was still every chance they could score a point, but despite being like, 5-6 laps down? The race got back underway on lap 33 with Damon Hill leading from teammate Ralf Schumacher for a Jordan 1-2, and Lacey, Frentzen, Diniz, and Trulli currently the point scorers. And then Coulthard and Nakano both several laps down. The Jordan boys had been told to not fight. Ralf ordered to not overtake Hill. And while team orders are something you don't really like to see, especially when it comes to a battle for the win, it's a bit understandable given the conditions and also the dream scenario the team found themselves in, on for not only their first win in F1 but a 1-2. And that's how the race ended. After 44 laps of Spa-Francorchamps, Damon Hill crossed the finish line to win the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, a second ahead of teammate Ralf Schumacher in second, to give Jordan their first ever win in F1 and a 1-2. Jean Alesi closed off the podium, which Nadu would have made Sauber happy, but I doubt anybody would have been happier at Spa that day than Eddie Jordan. Just look at how he was leaping around and running to the vehicle to get them to the podium after the race. Seriously, have you ever seen a team owner happier after getting a 1-2? And here's a fact for you. The Irish national anthem was not played on the podium as it should have been for Jordan, being the winning constructor, as even though Jordan was based in the UK, the team was registered with an Irish license. Eddie was Irish after all. I remember EJ talking about this on the Formula for Success podcast, and if I remember right what he said, they didn't have the Irish national anthem on hand or something, so only the British national anthem got played. played for Damon Hill winning, and like that led to like people mistakenly thinking that Jordan was registered under a British license. But as I said already, it wasn't, and he apparently got some heat from the Irish press because of all this. Which honestly just goes to show how unexpected Jordan winning this race was if it didn't even have the Irish national anthem on hand, but don't quote me on this, by the way. But despite the team's national anthem not being played, it was still a brilliant first win for a team that was led by a man who was much loved in the world of F1 and who is missed by everyone. Anyways, I'll end this one here. Let me get your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.